My name's Paul Chatterton. Welcome to our panel on investing in nature. I lead the Landscape Finance Lab, and we've got a treat for you, I think. We've got a very serious topic. How do we get unlock capital for regenerative economy? And as we talked about what we were going to say here, we realised it's all about the words. It's all about how we talk to each other and listen to each other. And let's start with a very quick poll. How many of you are reasonably fluent in the world of finance, in the language of finance? Put your hand up if you're confident in that world. 4 or 5. Okay, good. Put your hand up if you're confident in the world of biodiversity, the language of biodiversity. Yeah? Okay, not exactly that. We've got some overlap. Some people who are biodiversity finance fluent. That's good to see. But generally, these are two worlds that don't talk to each other, that have very different languages, and our challenge is to bring them together. So that's what we'll be talking about, experiences on what's been done already and how we take it to the next level, and particularly how we unlock capital to take it to the next level. We've got massive problems. We've got a polycrisis on climate, biodiversity, food, water, democracy now. Trump is coming in. We've got tipping points that are already starting to tip. The world is in a little bit of a mess. If you use the wording of the financial world, these are the headwinds, because financiers all have yachts and they're used to talking about things in terms of yachting terms. But we've got a lot of tailwinds. I discovered just recently that there's $200 billion of money already flowing for nature-positive finance. Much of that is government finance, but there's a whole lot of commercial finance coming. We've got a major tailwind in the fact that there's $7 trillion that's being spent on negative subsidies and negative investments into fossil fuels and so on. But we've got some headwinds that are pushing in the other direction, some extraordinary headwinds that are starting to happen. The accounting system is being overhauled at the moment, and they're talking about putting nature in the centre of corporate reporting and financial reporting. That's going to shift a whole lot. The Norwegian pension fund, the largest pension fund on the planet, has just decided they're going to put a nature risk filter into their $1.5 trillion worth of investment. So that's going to unlock a whole lot of money, shift it out of fossil fuels and other destructive activities, and start putting it into the sorts of things that our friends here are working on. And there's many other initiatives that are shifting, that are creating tailwinds for nature positive. Oops, I'm losing my phone. So we've got this opportunity. We'll hear from how to take action at a small scale, but also how to connect that at a large scale. How to connect that sequentially. And in the terms of finance, that's aggregating and creating portfolios and so on. But we'll also hear about how justice is a core question in investment. Who gets rich out of investing this money? Do the profits go back to London, to Washington, to Hong Kong? Or do they stay with the people in the rainforests of Brazil, in the peatlands of Scotland, where the value is produced and where the nature is being restored? This is a key question. And if you talk to many of us, we call that equity. That's fairness. If you talk to a finance person, equity is what you own. It's the things that you own. So you use that word, it can mean two totally different things. And this is the challenge that we've got. We've got to find very simple language that we can all understand. And let me stop talking and start introducing you to our panel then, where the question is how to design for a nature-positive future. How do we fill this gap? How do we scale up the efforts we've got? And I'm going to introduce you to Maria, who leads some extraordinary investments with indigenous communities across Brazil that are many times the size of Austria. Maria, over to you if you'd introduce yourself. And what do you see at the moment? What's happening? What's working? How is the money getting invested into the rainforests of Brazil and the other habitats of Brazil? And what are the lessons for you?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Well, it's a big question. So my name is Amália Souza, and I'm the founder of something called Casa, Socio-Environmental Fund. It was a strategy by local actors experienced in environmental protection across South America, remembering our biomes, our cross-border biomes. The Amazon sits in 9 countries. And we work all over the region because you cannot save half of the forest or this side of the river. So you have to think holistically when you're talking about protecting life. So we set up this fund 20 years ago, and we've made maybe so far, it's hard to translate that into, I think I had the numbers, like 50 million euros and around 5,000 grants across 10 countries. But recently, so that's the idea, the point was something was missing about protecting these places. Usually the concentration of money, conservation money, or, mostly is in the hands of a handful of enormous international NGOs that spend a lot on themselves. They do good work, produce good stuff. But the communities, the real people who protect these places, who have been doing this for hundreds, thousands of years, are the people who live inside these biomes. It is the way they live there that has protected these places. If you look at science and at Google Maps, everywhere that you have forests standing on this planet, it is indigenous lands, mainly. Not only, but local communities who have learned from indigenous people. So that's the majority of the population in remote places like the Amazon. And that's where we targeted. We said, if we're going to protect these places, these people need to be engaged as subjects of their own solutions. They need to have the resources to do what they know is the solution for protection of territories, their rights to territories, and their ways in improving their ways of life, because they are traders by nature. They've always traded. They live from the forest. But they know how to do that without destroying it. So that's what we have to learn. And this is the connection that we're making here. Just on your transfer of resources, the reason we come over to the north, right, to Austria and US and whatever, is because we know that Oxfam just did I don't know if you've heard of it, it's a large social justice NGO. They put out a report recently that says that $30 million per hour is transferred from the global south to the global north through investments. So it's not staying, right? The money of philanthropy is not staying. The investment money isn't staying back there. The transfer of wealth from south to north is historical. All our gold from Brazil ended up in Europe back. And so anyway, so we need to bring that to mind. And what we're talking about now is that the most important, the most biodiverse places on this planet are in the global south, or mainly in the southern hemisphere. And the Amazon, although there are many very important biomes and all of them work together to protect life, the Amazon is what scientists are calling the heart of the planet, because it pumps water. It's like it has the function of the heart. It pulsates water out into the atmosphere, and it reaches everywhere. So we cannot let the Amazon collapse. And that's kind of an urgent plea. We need to get these resources over there, and we've been doing this in scale in terms of you can't not just fund 10 projects or invest in 10, 50, 100. We were talking about thousands of communities. Once we reach that, then we'll tip the turning point back in our favor.
And the heart is the communities, and you, right. From what you've explained to me, it's this subjective approach that you transfer the money to them and they decide what action they take, which is, I work for a very big NGO, the conservation NGO. As you say, most of the money stayed in headquarters and a little bit got to the communities. So
yeah, so the point is not radical. Being a fund, the point is to transfer resources. So the money comes in, it goes out. So we have 12 calls for proposals a year at least in huge numbers. We could be, but we're only attending to 20% of our demand. One example that I can give just quickly, we partnered with the Brazilian bank to put money Brazil-wide into communities, developing the businesses in the socio-biodiversity aspect and nature-based solutions. We have money to fund 400 projects. We just did the first call for proposals to fund 200. We got 2,048 applications. Only so you have the sense of dimension of how prepared society is to execute solutions, and the resources aren't available. But once the resources are available, all they want is to live from the places where they live sustainably. So it is a doable thing, and it's a very appealing thing for investors and that's what we're bringing. Like, it's a deep knowledge of what the demands are, what kinds of communities, the complexities of those biomes, and so that you can plug into the right kind of partnership and not risk.
Beautiful. And so, shifting from the Amazon, but sticking with forests, Elise is creating the most extraordinary network of pocket forests, of community forests in the cities. This is the flip side to the countryside, but just as important. Elise, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Paul. Hi, everyone. My name is Elise. I founded SUGi. I'll tell you about it in a minute, but just pocket forest. Okay, what are they and how can you visualize that? Imagine this room. That's actually a perfect size of a pocket forest. It could be 150, 200 square meters. I mean, that's the smallest that we planned. We also go large in cities to a hectare. But imagine that would be almost 600 native plants that we're putting in here. And you're really mimicking the biome of the ancient forest, which is shrub, subtree, tree, and canopy. And you're really thinking about complexity here. Like, how can we not plant trees, but create an ecosystem on a small space? So minimum space, maximum diversity. And then why did I start this? Like, I actually wanted to plant trees. I really wanted to contribute to nature. You know, I've this moment of feeling overwhelmed of what's going on everywhere around the planet. And as I was looking in tree planting organizations, I mean, go back to 2018, the headlines were millions of trees here and there, and I was like, where and how? And how many actually are still restoring an ecosystem and bringing biodiversity? For me, it was very obscure to understand, you know, the results of all that. So this is where SUGi was born from: accessibility, visibility, and planting right where the people live and work. And so really bringing this experience of reconnecting to nature, of restoring the web of life where we live. And then the product in and of itself, I mean, think about this room, you know, it cleans the air, it cools the air, it takes the stormwater in the city, it helps with mental health. I mean, now the words are resilient cities, nature-positive cities, green infrastructure. So there's just a beginning of a movement. But in the beginning, when I was, you know, because the way it is modeled, SUGi, is that it's an umbrella, and we work with expert forest makers on the ground. So I raise the funds for the forest makers, like you do, the micro-granting. And in the beginning, when I was speaking to people and trying to find the funds, it was biodiversity what and why in the city. So it was very hard. But right now, it's really beautiful to see. It's the tailwind and the the headwind. Is that right now you can see the conversation is getting there. People are starting to understand the importance of bringing nature back into our cities.
How many of these pocket forests do you have around the world? In how many countries?
Yeah, so 240 pocket forests we have in 24 countries, which is 54 cities. London has one of the biggest concentrations, and also in India, really.
Ah, and this is just beginning, I presume. I mean, there must be. What's the demand?
Well, the demand is right now, it's hard to keep track of. We just need to be able to fund the demand. So, meaning there's a movement, right? When we plant, like last week we planted our first pocket forest in Mexico City. We say, let's put it out in our social, and immediately we have this movement of people wanting to come volunteer. And what do you do? So this is where you also see the heart is people want it. People want to be part of it. They want to be part of a solution. And so we opened up for people to enroll and to be part. And all of a sudden, 300 people turned up for a small pocket forest. I mean, 500 square meters, 1,500 plants. But that's the success. It goes hand in hand with the community.
You'd think that the cities would be paying for this. Are they doing that yet?
So right now, the way we were able to do it was through public, private, and philanthropic partnerships. Yeah. Cities themselves, the way we wanted to really push the movement is to go grounds up, like grassroots, work with community groups and find corporate funding, like what we will hear about more. But so really that was really what helped us. It's a language I also know from my past. I come out of a creative world, and it was through CSR and through corporate funding that we were able to make this movement.
And if you think about it in the future, the reductions in health costs, the reductions in pollution costs, the water runoff that this creates, the food production that's possible, if the more of these that you have in your city, the more costs you reduce, other costs you reduce, there's got to be a commercial value to these things.
Certainly, I mean, we all know, like, green infrastructure. Think of the High Line in New York. Just to plant it or to create it was a fraction of what the world is now. I mean, the value of the housing around it, the green jobs it provides, the crime goes down. There's a myriad of benefits, and there's study after study that comes out now how important it is to spend time in nature. I mean, I could ask you, who put last his hands in the soil? It's healing in these, like, crazy times. Just go plant, yeah, right? It's very good.
And for children, learning the names of trees instead of learning the logos of companies or fashion brands is so special, is really special. Yeah. I'm going to shift to Ronald. Do you invest in pocket forests in cities, or you invest in pockets of nature all over Austria, Ronald? And tell us a bit about your work.
Hello everybody, my name is Ronald. I'm managing director of a non-profit foundation which is founded by Rewe International, and Bilder is one of the biggest food retailers in Austria, corporate funding. But I really love my foundation because it has been founded together with BirdLife Austria, and I think they've started this cooperation to unlock capital from a big corporation. So I think the founding history of my foundation is really a civil organization or a nature organization really wanted to work together with the corporate to unlock money.
So BirdLife came to Rewa, not the other way around. It was the conservationists that came to the corporates, or
they had a cooperation for a couple of years before, and then they started discussions. How we can make the next step, and the result is our foundation, Bluehendes Oesterreich. And personally for me, that was also really the big decision. I will work for this corporation because of BirdLife, because that's the reason why, and I think that's the credibility. There's really a big corporation, and one of my board members and the founder is here in the room. It's an honest on this basis that because the BirdLife is also a member of our board, and so all the decisions and the discussions, we're really doing it together with the organization.
So I want to hear about what you're investing in nature and with communities in Austria, but let's talk about the value for the company and for the people who work in the company. I'm sure you're not the only one who feels pride about what your foundation is doing. What value does it have for corporate employees, for REWA employees?
When we talk of Rewe International and our founder, it's one of the biggest companies in Austria, but also in middle of Europe, and there is a sustainability department and a lot of motivated people within the department. I think it's very intrinsic for a company with this size that you really have like a sustainability department with a lot of knowledge and a lot of motivation within the departments and the company. And our foundation, it's not like they founded it and then let it go, because we are still very close to the company. And so what we are really doing within the foundation and what we are supporting and what we are making possible for nature conservation in Austria, for example, the last 10 years, we celebrate 10th anniversary this year. We supported more than 300 different partners in Austria. For nature conservation, for also working in bogs, restoration of rivers, forest projects. And I think we're the only private foundation in Austria who invest money in the whole country for nature conservation. And this is also visible within the company, within the board, within the decision makers, the top management of Rewe and Billa. And to make an example, in Austria there are only 700 non-profit foundations, and only 5 to 10 are working in the fields of climate and nature conservation.
Ouch.
Ouch, yeah.
Ouch.
And that's the last 10 years, there was this big hope. There will be more, there will be a better development, but we are really the biggest, the only one for nature conservation. And like this year with our anniversary, when I look on the right to Gavin, we decided to join the Nature Positive initiative globally, just to really make a big sign. We really want to support. We want to take the next step, but also to show other companies, to other initiatives, go on nature conservation. We need more foundations. We need more initiatives. And I wanted to give you you talked about what's the situation right now about nature conservation, climate. Yesterday there was a press release in Austria. Austrian forests are no longer carbon sinks. It's final.
Really?
They emit 5 million tons of carbon every year since like 2021. So, and if we talk about unlock capital, unlock money, we're sitting right here. Just to give you another impression, like I'm working before in the regional development on the ground, managing director of a nature park. The last 25 years, there have been like 40 billion euros for the common agrarian policy of the European Union invested in Austria.
Yeah, out of the 7 trillion globally.
It's really, and if you take the look back now to the carbon problem with the Austrian forests, there's really, we need more initiatives really to unlock money within companies, non-profit foundations. And I see it. You talked about your number of the number of projects you supported. We screened 850 project proposals the last 10 years. And there's so much potential. And to talk about unlock money, even if we're one of the richest countries in Austria, in the world, we have a lot of nature conservations and activists and initiatives. It doesn't matter in the cities, in the rural area, within the agriculture sector. Even if you have funding with 80 or 90% in Austria, they cannot start the projects. They're still missing the 10%. Yeah. So with like 10% of investment, even there's no return of investment in the nature conservation sector, you can leverage 90%, because there's really a great funding system within the European Union, within Austria. I think there's no really big difference like in Germany or in Italy, but like with 10 and 15%, you can really unlock millions of dollars or euros.
So let's move to Gavin. Gavin, you're working on linking all of these sorts of initiatives together, and they're very different initiatives. It's a massive undertaking, and unlocking some of the potential. We have so little money, given the challenge that we have in front of us. Tell us what you're doing.
Great, thanks, Paul.
Who are you?
So, quick introduction. I'm Gavin Edwards. I'm the Executive Director of the Nature Positive Initiative. You've probably heard the words Nature Positive echoing around the halls or on the panel as well. It emerged as a term in the last handful of years as a bit of a corollary to net zero in the nature space. It is both a common narrative for nature, but it is also a measurable goal for nature as well. How can we understand whether nature is being halted and reversed and recovering, and how would we go about measuring that? As an initiative, we have 27 partners, including conservation organizations such as BirdLife, business coalitions such as the World Business Council on Sustainable Development, standard-setting organizations such as the Task Force on Nature-related Financial Disclosure, and a few other perspectives as well, universities, Indigenous Network, and one to others too, financial institutions. We exist as that partnership and 250 other organizations. Thank you, Ronald, for joining in the last few days as well, and Ronald's Foundation, to essentially promote the narrative, but also the measurable goal as well. And coming back to your question, Paul, how do we tie these together and how do we unlock capital? We think that one of the biggest challenges to unlocking capital is the lack of a common approach to measuring nature. One of the headwinds is it just looks very complex. There's a lot of different metrics you could use. It's very confusing out there. In climate and with carbon, it is easier. There's a lot of challenges inside carbon, but we have a metric, CO2 equivalent. What is the small number of metrics that the world could agree on to know whether nature is in recovery or decline at any scale? If we can agree on a common approach to metrics, it's not the only barrier between the capital and the projects, but is one of the barriers right now. And we're basically, our mission in the next 12 months is to help solve this particular problem.
Really exciting, and this is absolutely transformational. We've got you here under false pretenses, I'm afraid. We're talking about unlocking capital and investing in nature. There's not, as you hear, there's not much happening yet in the commercial world. And that's a reflection of the reality. That's what it looks like out there. We are inventing a new asset class on biodiversity. It's super exciting. It's really hard. It's quite frustrating, but it's happening. And I want to throw a question to our panelists and then give you an opportunity to ask questions. So start formulating your questions. If the Norwegian pension fund came to you and decided that they had a billion to invest in your program, what would you do with it? That's the question. And it's perhaps not a completely unrealistic question. The challenge, of course, is to create a return back for the Norwegian pension fund, because they're not going to give their money away. They're pretty smart. How do we do that? Amália, do you want to start? Yeah,
well, sure,
go
might as well. Well, the first thing is we've been building for the last 20 years, not just one fund to get, grow. It's exactly the opposite. The thinking of concentration is what we don't want. So we've built a whole infrastructure of funding disbursement mechanisms inside countries with very rich biodiversity. So Brazil, we have over 20 funds working in very different aspects of delivering resources into communities. Also, we, Casa Fund, helped to share our model and methodology, which is very sophisticated, with countries throughout South America, Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, Mozambique. We help them to set up their own internal fund. So the closer the funding system is to the communities, the more they can deliver in terms of resources that communities can strengthen and develop their own businesses. So now we are also a network we call Socio-Environmental Funds of the Global South. We are 16 funds, some global, some regional, operating, delivering resources into communities in 50 countries in the Global South. So we've been building the infrastructure. So $1 billion is not even enough by now for all the things.
Good.
But it is about partnerships and collaboration and very good projects. So everything is there. No, the money needs to arrive, which it hasn't.
So, but giving the money to your friends so they can give it to their
We can
their
mobilize.
friends.
No, yeah, we can operate everything together. That's what we are already doing anyway.
Yeah.
We can either concentrate and split and manage together, or they can go separately. But anyway, the point is that there is an infrastructure, very sophisticated, that knows everything there is to know about this, and that knows everybody, all the players, and we work together. And so it's a very easy process to deliver and then to come out with collective results and impact which we monitor constantly. That's what our mechanisms allow us to do.
And I guess a part of that is putting that in the terms that financiers understand, and it's probably not so different to what you already do. It's how you talk about
and
it.
We have been producing, last thing, we produce a lot of evidence of impact, and evidence like through publications. We have lots of publications on our website looking at different aspects of impact. Adaptation, so locally based solutions for adaptation. There are communities we fund that now don't need us anymore. They're producing biodiversity credits. There's a lot of potential for communities to actually handle their own partnerships once they are pulled out of invisibility, which is our expertise. So it is a question of connecting the dots, which we know how to do.
You told me that your investments cover territories of how many thousand hectares?
I was giving, so that's a measurement, but I was giving one example. Out of over 1,000 grants to indigenous peoples, territories directly, we measured 45 territories that we funded simultaneously, and for them to do their protection and governance of territory. So they learn how to use machineries and get better engines and get drones and get trained. You get the youth involved, and together there are 70 grants into 45 territories in the Amazon. Together, we were able to map that they protected 63 million hectares of forest just with these 45 territories. There's a lot more, but so I said you do the math.
So I did the math.
Because it results in real protection.
Austria is 8 million hectares, so that's 8 times the size of Austria. Your friends are pretty effective. So, Gavin.
Yeah, let me comment on this as well. As I mentioned before, developing common metrics, but it's really important to do that at a very, very low cost. So I would take a very small proportion of that Norwegian funding.
You're getting a full billion. We expect you to spend that as well.
Yeah, exactly. We'll come to that second. First of all, make sure that any claim like this, 63 million hectares, is made on a comparable basis and doesn't cost a lot to measure. Drive down the cost of measurement. In fact, we've got a piloting program for our metrics right now in 32 countries across 6 different sectors with about more than 30 companies testing metrics on this question of cost and practicality. If we can drive down that cost, then the funding should be going to the on-the-ground work. And of course, in this case, the source of the funding, the capital, is looking for a return on its investment as well. So it's really important that we can measure progress and we can claim progress in a very, very economical way, but that is a legitimate and strong claim as well. If you want to say that we are seeing a net gain in biodiversity, how do you stand that up?
So get behind Nature Positive Initiative. This is really important. We have a common language. We all have a common language to speak with. Elise, I was most struck in hearing how you explained your work by how little friction there is, how quickly people act, how little it costs, how simple it is for you to initiate this process. It's clearly been very difficult to get the process going. I'm not underestimating that, but what will you do with your billion?
Take a break? No.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, first of all, I mean, for us, what matters is creating biomass in cities. So that's really our North Star, and then have communities involved. So, I mean, rough calculation, we'd be making 50,000 pocket forests, but I wouldn't really look at it that way. What we really want to look at, and what we started actually in London, if you think of it, we've got 30 pocket forests and some are connecting. So that idea of being able to create urban acupuncture and pollinator pathways or migratory bird, corridors into cities, that is something that we could really activate. So it's about deepening the work, because right now we've been going pocket by pocket. So this influx of money would allow us to really take over a city. And then, of course, we need to talk, Gavin, on how we really can show the impact it has towards the economy of a city. Is it green jobs? Is it avoiding a flood? If you build a parking lot in a riverbed, you might be sure, Valencia, to have a flood. I mean, nothing will stop it. So we need they act as sponges. So you hear it a lot now, right? Like heat islands, sponge cities, green infrastructure, we need to invest in it. It has to be done. But it's not just pocket forest. It's like street lining, it's parks, it's wetlands around cities. We need it all.
And Ronald, you clearly have some ideas of where to spend your billion, but I want to ask you also, as you answer that, behind you is one of the biggest food producers in this part of the world, and what role can they play? What role can you use that billion, how can you use that billion to shift what they do even further?
1 billion, I should have to ask my wife how we spend, because there will be no spare time for me, then I really have to start working.
Yes.
Like 24/7. The first question is, with 1 billion, I really would think about how can we take this money and start a fund together with the government. For me, it's the question, I don't want to do it alone. Yeah. I think we really have to shift how we spend and invest money, and I'm really not happy how, even in our country, how we invest in nature conservation, in climate. I think it's not very transparent, it's not equity, it's not open. So I think that's for me the most important thing, to really start like a public-private partnership. And I don't want to be the managing director with my board to spend money like that. So I think that's really to start a fair cooperation with public authorities, but maybe to have the vision to really to transform how we support and invest and to make it possible to enable nature conservation in Austria, in Europe, or somewhere else. I think that's very, very important for me. And the next question, I think Rewe is not a food. Yeah, Rewe is not the food producer; it's a food retailer. So,
of course.
And I think that's for me. As I worked, I have been working like 10 years on the other side, and I really. Sometimes I asked myself, when I was like 27, 28, 30 years old, man, there's so much money in agriculture, and it's not coming to the farmers. Yeah. And I'm working on the other side, and I think now there is really not a lot of money in the food sector. And really, I think that there is so much public money dedicated to farmers and to food production. Yeah, even food retailers can do really a lot of things better. Even if I think, do we need the food from all over the world to have it here in the stores in Austria? So if I look at myself, what do I buy? I think 99% food and products are only from Austria within the region. But if we talk about this food producing system, and I think it's a food system, retailers, producers, but also public authorities, big funding, the European Union, and then we talk about federal laws, federal funding. I think that's one of the biggest complexities we have, the food system and the food supply chain. And if you have this unbelievable amount of money, like 1 billion euros, I think it's also how we can start a cooperation between the food sector, the agricultural sector, and public authorities to think how we can transform this process. But as like the European Union started an EIT for food. Yep. It's a big program now in the European Union, and they started to bring together farmers and food retailers. I think that's a very important step, and it's just like 2 or 3 years old.
So connected up systems is what you're talking about. It's not the government, it's not the philanthropists, it's not the corporates that are going to answer it. It's all of us working together. That's what I'm hearing from each of you. Your network of networks in Brazil, Amália, and some metrics. So over to you. You have a chance for questions. We have one in the front, and one in the back. Yeah,
what was in the front? You?
Just very quickly, there's a functioning market for voluntary carbon credits. Certainly SUGi, possibly Brazil, maybe Bluehendes, Oesterreich could benefit from that. I've heard Amália vaguely refer to biodiversity credits, but are you using carbon credits to finance your projects?
Who'd like to take that one?
You heard me
Amália?
say, huh?
Go for it.
No, go ahead.
No, I just can quickly add, I've looked into that. But the way we plant and the way we restore, the funds we would receive per square meter do not add, and see, circle of intention, I was looking at it, and the respect for nature and the beauty of nature, if you want to restore it and have it live on 3 years, 5 years, 6 years in a city, it takes maintenance, needs care, and so we can never match. Like, I've tried, even if I would add all those pocket forests, those 240 together, can it be like one? I've not found a solution.
They're too small individually, yes. But your forests, yes, or the forests that the communities you're working with own,
it's a one big
are
forest
pretty big,
connected.
yeah.
Yeah, what I was saying is that there's a lot of people, of course, looking at how indigenous peoples can manage their own and get resources from their own carbon credits, but this is all very complicated math for them. But I understand that there are scientists that actually are measuring it anyway, and some of them have been trying, but there's a lot of opposition because it's in their minds, it's like somebody not stopping to destroy, they're just taking the credit to kind of compensate. It doesn't really add up in the end. But I know that there are some indigenous, so the indigenous lands are huge, right? I mean, thousands of hectares each one. The Amazon is an enormous region, and it's still, most of the forest is intact, although we've already lost 13%, which is big, and there's a lot of deforestation. So the effort here is to stop destruction. So creative solutions, like there's an indigenous, one of our partners with the Awanawa people in the western part of Acre on the border with Peru. They have a very large region, and they've become sophisticated enough in terms of partnering with all kinds of different companies and industries and adding value to their products. Like, this is art, and it's sold as art, not artifacts, which, so, and then they sell cultural pieces, they bring people and they make money out of their ceremonies. People pay to be there, but they're also now working with a company on mapping the biodiversity credits, and this is something that is so much closer to them that it's already what they do, right? They preserve,
Nature
and they can
means
take
something.
They can take credit, and this is something that could be multiplied. So what we're looking at here, it's not a bunch of little projects disconnected. It's like, how do you do a multi-approach system, which involves cities in the Amazon. Amazon has big cities inside. The peripheries, the demand of the cities, of the surrounding regions, but what are the answers? There's not just indigenous territories. You have communities that have been working for the last 30 years to develop different kinds of protection territories, like the forest dwellers. They call extractive, but not in the mining sense. It's in the forest products, non-timber forest. They call it extractive reserves or sustainable development reserves. So there's people, forest people living there, living from the rubber tapping or selling the Brazil nuts or whatever products they already have. But it's a collective stewardship. So these spaces are completely ready for engagement in these kinds of solutions where they could produce for the market or even biodiversity credit. So and we have a very sophisticated group of NGOs. So there's a lot of answers already. Everything is kind of here to be used. And the question is, how do you engage these two ends to make this work?
And we've, if I can take off my facilitator hat, we've just helped the government and other stakeholders in Ireland create the world's first triple crediting system for biodiversity, for carbon and for water. And this is to restore peatlands, 700,000 hectares of peatlands. It was rocket science to put that together, but it's come together and it's very good. And if we can plug that into what's happening with the Nature Positive initiative, then that's a repeatable offering across the world. It'd be great to have one in Brazil. We've got time for just this last question, I'm afraid, and then we'll wrap up. Andrew.
Hi everyone, thanks for the discussion so far. Wondering if you could speak to a disconnect that I often encountered in my work, which is that the people who benefit from restored natural capital and ecosystem services are not generally the same people who might pay for it. And so in order to increase the flow of financial capital into natural capital, I'm wondering if you have interesting formulations of sort of linking those two up and how to actually close that gap.
Ooh, Gavin, that's a really tough question. Yeah. I'm sure you wanted the difficult ones.
Yeah, quite a fundamental question as well. I mean, there are two different needs that you're describing there, and I think a well-designed conservation programs and business interventions on the ground should be able to meet both needs. Regenerative agriculture, of which you are very familiar with, is a really good example of that. There can be direct benefits for biodiversity, for the net zero agenda, and also for good business models as well. And if you're a pension fund sitting on the other side of the world and you want to invest in that, you know you're going to get a reasonable return while seeing, and ideally, an increase in nature and a lowering of emissions as well. So I think they need to be explored. The problem is they're just not working at the scale that we need to right now, and I think the scale is key. How do we unlock that? We talked biodiversity credits earlier. There's going to be some problems in scaling biodiversity credits considerably. For example, there was a high integrity set of principles launched last year by the UK and French governments. One of those principles is biodiversity is not fungible. You can't destroy biodiversity in one part of the world and buy a credit in the Amazon. A ton of carbon in different parts of the world is the same, biodiversity is not. So you can't have those big flows of wealth north to south that are needed in the example we heard in the Amazon. So some of these things are not going to scale, but some can. Blended finance, how to leverage pension funds in a much bigger way. Paul's provocative question hopefully will become a real scenario in the next years. Nature is the new frontier. We're seeing an awful lot of companies and financial institutions, as they were struggling to gain literacy on carbon a decade ago, they're now struggling but learning quickly on nature as well. So it's not impossible that we'll see those kinds of scenarios play out in the next years, and we need to be ready for it with good projects, with good business propositions, and of course with good metrics as well.
Thank you, Gavin. So you are witness to the birth of a new industry. It's a painful birth. It's all over the place. There's some exciting players, as you see, in putting this together. And come again next year, and you'll see a very different story as we build this plane. One sentence from each of you to conclude. What do you take away, Amália?
Well, actually, one sentence is good. I was going to say, investments in the Amazon don't just benefit people in the Amazon. We're talking about life on this planet and the future of humanity. So whatever is going into the Amazon for protection is going to come around as benefits for the whole humanity. So in that sense, that division doesn't exist.
Well, on to the cities. So as in the Amazon, the biodiversity is key in our cities. It's our web of life. It's our longevity. And so it will take new ways of looking at things, new ways of investing, and not just looking at a return on investment financially, but really understanding the social impact of forests and cities.
If we want to unlock money and capital, I think we have to unlock knowledge and people. Yeah. And we had a table before with CEOs for Future Austria, and there was a lot of discussion about motivation. You have to convince people, you have to convince management, board members, and I think that's a very important point. At the beginning, it's not about money, it's about people. And as you said, maybe there's a tipping point now. We have to start, or we have only 4 or 5 years left, and like in Austria, we have convinced people to start investing in nature.
Yeah, my words would be that a net zero and nature positive, more equitable world is necessary for our survival, and it's possible if we begin to build that nature positive economy that we've been discussing today.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists. Fantastic discussion, and give a round of applause.